A U.S. Army soldier who used to imagine storylines for the Superman comics is now actually writing them, and he's even been nominated for the comic book equivalent of an Oscar. This multi-talented soldier also tours the country playing the trumpet for the U.S. Army Field Band. Philip Kennedy Johnson is here today to talk about the important role of arts in the Army. So let's welcome Sergeant First Class Johnson to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Aubrey.
So we need to hear a lot more about your background, because you think of the Army, you think of soldiers. You don't necessarily think of the artsy side, but you've got musical and a writing background as well. What made you decide to take your talents to the Army?
When I started, I went to college for music, and when I started that degree, I started seeing advertisements for openings in military bands and the Army band specifically, and I was just really struck by that. I didn't know, my whole life I've just had this love of making things. I've been drawing and writing music and playing music like my whole life. And finding out that I could do those things for the Army, that I could do it in pursuit of something bigger, than just doing it because I loved it, was really powerful. I didn't know that those were options. When I looked into the Army as a student, and I thought that, enlisting would just mean becoming a capital S soldier, and that was as simple as it got. But there's just so much more to it than that. There's over 200 jobs you can do, and learning that, music was one of those career paths was really, really cool. So yeah, now I'm in the Army Field Band in Washington, D.C., and we connect America with its Army. We tour and, go places to play live concerts for Americans and honor our veterans, tell the story of our active duty service members doing the hard thing all over the world. And it's a really powerful opportunity to get to do a job like this.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And, you guys are kind of sitting there in the background. How prevalent is it in the Army? I think you mentioned something like 200 different types of opportunities. But, how many soldiers, I guess, is there a certain percentage of soldiers that are also involved in the arts as they serve?
I don't know what the percentage would be, but I've met an awful lot of creative people. Some people who have other kinds of jobs in the Army, but also have creative pursuits on the outside, but also people who have, career fields in the creative arts. Actually, I got into writing comics because of my connection with my own brother, who was an illustrator, and he wanted to do comics for a living and didn't know how to get started. And so he and I started to kind of educate ourselves on how comics work. And that's how I got in. And he actually enlisted as well as a multimedia illustrator. And his whole gig was just making art for the Army. That's a job that we need and value. There's other jobs like that too. Photography, there are videographers, people in the combat camera field. There are, linguists and people in cyber that do very creative things. It's just tons of opportunities.
Well, it's really cool that you can come on and talk about kind of that other side that people don't normally think of it. Sounds like being artistic runs in your family. Tell us a little bit more about the Superman comics. We took a look at a couple images, but what are you doing as far as that? You draw and write the comics?
I don't draw them, no, sadly. I do draw some. I used to draw a lot as a kid. I was pretty good, but not enough to.
Okay.
I don't let people see my work anymore. I mostly just draw, for reference. I primarily write the scripts and work with much more talented artists than myself. But yeah, I did a couple of stories with Boom Studios that got noticed by DC and Marvel, and now I've had opportunities to write Captain America and Superman and Alien at Marvel right now. And yeah, I currently write the monthly action comics series for DC Comics, which is the Superman title. It's a huge honor. He's my first hero, and just a real privilege to get to write him.
That's amazing. So what would you say to someone who may be watching and they're like, hey, I love the arts. I never knew that I could do these things in the Army. What would you say to them?
I'd say, I would recommend you check out goarmy.com to see what the options are, because that was a resource I did not have as a student. I just didn't even know how to educate myself on what was possible. But I would also say chase your pursuits, man. There's so many opportunities in the Army that I had no idea were there. So I would say, know that you don't have to give up who you are when you enlist. You can still, follow your dreams, and in some cases even be trained in that field in the Army. But even if you decide to, like, I got the creative itch to write again after I'd been in the Army as a musician for a while.
That's amazing.
And the Army has made that very possible to do both. And it didn't have to be that way. I was very grateful that they made it so easy to do both.
That is
so yeah,
awesome to hear that. Thank you
have
so
more options
much.
than you think you do. So GoArmy.com.
I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about arts in the Army, and you can get more info at GoArmy.com.